Hey, we're talking about more than D&D. Up next on Geek at SA.
Do not attempt to adjust your YouTube video. We control the stream.
And welcome back to Geek at SA. It's Friday and we're having fun and I'm playing with my little hands.
I thought you were going to use them. You're going to be like, role-playing games. Yeah.
I have a shot. So we're talking about RPGs today, but more than just D&D. Well, we're not going to be talking about D&D.
Well, we're going to talk a little bit about D&D.
Not much.
I mean, I think... So the reason we wanted to talk about this is we're actually starting to play D&D again. But
it's been a while since we played D&D. A long while.
And it's kind of a homebrew variant of D&D. So we wanted to kind of tell people a little bit about what role-playing games are if they've never played them, and what a homebrew is and some of the different things so that people kind of, know about it and maybe you're interested in it and they want to play it.
Right.
So obviously a lot of people have seen D&D at this point now that it's been in Stranger Things. There's been a lot of people on Instagram and stuff since COVID showing how they played it, and celebrities have made it a little more famous, and athletes have made it a little more famous. So I think D&D is something that people are aware of, right?
Yeah, but they think that's kind of everything that there is.
Right, they think that's the only...
There's way so much more than... That's not even the tip of the iceberg.
Right. So what we're playing right now is what we call a homebrew, which it's not really a homebrew, it's a company, but they kind of turned their homebrew into something that you can use. So it's something that you can use along with Dungeons and Dragons, but homebrew means that it's not licensed by the company who writes Dungeons and Dragons, right? It's another company who's written this companion type book that you can use along with Dungeons and Dragons to make different kinds of characters, and you still follow a lot of the same rule set as Dungeons and Dragons, but in this one that Vincent and I are playing right now, we're awakened animals. So, a lot of us have gotten dogs and stuff during COVID, or we've had pets, and we had a dog before we had Anakin. So we thought this will be fun when a friend of mine said, hey, we're playing this new one, you get to be an awakened animal.
It's really funny because, and I think I shocked you when I picked what I was going to be.
You totally shocked. I had
And I was like, this is going to be
idea.
the coolest thing ever. So I'm playing a fighter that is a teacup Yorkie.
Right. Yes, he is. He is, in fact. So he's this itty bitty dog with a complex who kind of walks around and he's a fighter. So he uses a double bladed axe and everything. It's great, actually. It's pretty awesome.
But the way it's explained is I can use two-handed weapons, but I use them in my mouth. I'm like this.
Right, because we're awakened, we're sentient, but we still don't have opposable thumbs. We don't stand and walk like people. We're not holding our weapons. So I'm a ranger, so I use a longbow. So I basically have to thunk the longbow into the ground, hold it steady with my paws, and then use my teeth to pull the longbow back and shoot the longbow. I'm a bigger dog. I'm a Dalmatian, so it works a little bit better. But one of the nice things about role-playing is we get to choose, you get to choose what your character's like. The books help you. Mm-hmm. They give you some ideas of, what your character can be like. So one of the things that I knew about Dalmatians, and I actually did a little research before we started playing this, is Dalmatians are really great. That's why they're fire dogs. They're really great at being types of rangers, right? They smell really well. They can hunt for stuff really well, but they tend to be kind of stupid. They get distracted really easily. They go off tangent if you're not, giving them a task or whatever.
Yeah.
So as soon as I saw that, I was like, okay, I'm going to be this idiot ranger dog, right?
Oh, hey, guys. Steve says, hey, guys, happy Friday. Happy Friday,
Hey,
Steve.
Steve, happy Friday. So as soon as we get the chance to role play, I'm there You know, look, there's a roly-poly. You know.
So you're just not role playing.
I'm just a dumb blonde. Yeah. Hey, that's role
So
playing.
you're just pretending to be a dog.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're just pretending to be a dog. Whereas Vincent is like this puffed up little dog, and he's like, you know, kind of angry and pissy all the time.
So
Oh,
he's
kind of like
just
Vincent.
not just
He's
pretending
not
to be
role playing.
Kinda.
So you're just pretending to be dogs.
Yeah, you're just pretending to be dogs. But you really have to bring that persona out. Well, I think it depends on who you play with, right? Because we talk a lot about role play, ROLE, versus role play, ROLL. So can you tell people a little bit about what's the difference between those two?
So role play, and this has gone on for the longest time. A lot of people like to go by the statistics, and that's what they are, and they don't go beyond that. When you're role playing, ROLE is you're becoming that character, not just flubbing a dice roll, but like you're physically feeling that, or you're mentally feeling that when you roll bad. Well, your character feels bad. So people that just roll are just like, oh, that was a bad roll.
Yeah. Well,
You don't get as great a connection with the character if you're just rolling dice.
we've played a lot of games where people role play, ROLL, and so they're reading through whatever module came from the book, and it's like those choose your adventure novels, like when you were a kid. So they're like, this happens and then what are you gonna do, right? And then you're like, okay, I do it, I roll my dice, okay, it was successful, whatever. So one of the nice things that I was worried about this new GM, DM, it's either GM for Game Master or DM for Dungeon Master, depending on what you're doing. I was
But
worried.
since we're talking for about more than D&D, we're gonna go general and go GM. But
Yeah.
other games have like other names for their GMs.
Yeah. But I think in general, a lot of us just use GM now because we've played more types. So
Because I think
always,
in ours we call them mission admins.
we do. We call
Yeah.
them the mission admin. But then we still call them
And
GMs
we
when
are
we're playing.
wearing our game publishing company shirts right
Yeah.
now. So
So I
this
always
is what we do too.
worry with a GM that you're going to get one that's just like, okay, and you go into a room and you see this and this is going to happen. So I like it when there's one who like sets the scene a little bit more and throws in some NPCs, which are non-player characters, and those characters also talk to you and interact with you, so that the
Yeah.
GM is role playing also. They're not just pushing the story out to you.
When I first started GMing, the kind of the GM that brought me into it and kind of like put me under Richard, put me under his wing, and says, just be very descriptive. So if you're going to describe something, really go into to paint a picture for the players of what's there. It may not even be like super important to the narrative of the game, but it's something that they'll remember because you described it so well. And then that's just kind of what it kind of brings them into the world.
Right.
To whereas if you're just going, okay, well, here's a room, what do you want to do?
Right. So what was that first experience where you were learning how to be a GM? Was it D&D or was it a different RPG?
It was not. It was a homebrew, not even sold for anything, just something that was kind of made up. But it was based on an RPG called Macho Women with Guns.
Okay.
So it had the same kind of system as that.
All right.
So that's what we played. We played based on that. It was a homebrew game called IMF.
That stood for Impossible Mission
Force.
Yeah. Yeah, and I played that. That was not the first one I played. I didn't play that until I was in my 20s, and I met
that's
Vince,
when I really started playing. But I wanted to bring this up because this was the actual first RPG I ever played.
Really?
Is Cyborg Commando.
Huh?
And it's funny, and I just realized because I looked at it today, Gary Gygax had a hand in this game.
Really?
Yeah.
So that's one that I actually have never played. I mean, there are so
And
many
this
out
wasn't
there.
TSR. This is by New Infinities.
Yeah. Well, and there are so many out there that I've not played every single potential RPG that's out there. So Cyborg Commando, is that more of like a Terminator type thing, or since I've never played it, what's that one kind of?
Yeah, kind of, sort of, but you're not bad.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It's been a long time, and I had just been brought in, and this is kind of a complicated system to be brought in on. So that's why I didn't take to it, but this is the first one that I experienced by one of my friends, Randy, back in middle school.
So I have to admit, like, D&D was my first excursion into role-playing games. I was 11 when I first played that.
Hey, Geeky Hoodie, how's it going?
Hey, hoodie.
He says, hey.
But there are a lot of things like kind of in that vein that we jumped to really quickly. Palladium.
But I think the first
GURPS.
one, GURPS. So we do have kind of like, if you've never heard of GURPS, can you quote GURPS of what? So that's what GURPS looks like right there. And that's just kind of like a general role-playing system that can be applied to anything.
So GURPS was a basic system that you could pretty much apply to anything you wanted to. And so that led to a lot of homebrews, like we were talking earlier with homebrews. And so people did all kinds of different things. You know, we played dragons versus dragons. We played futuristic stuff. A lot of people modded it because there was a Marvel role-playing game and a Star Wars role-playing game, but a lot of people ended up using GURPS and doing their own homebrew mods for X-Men, for Marvel, for Star Wars, and using that GURPS system in order to then play those. So that's nice about having that kind of system if you have somebody with that kind of imagination, or if you want to help bring in your own, if you like game mechanics, then you can then say, hey, okay, if you wanted to be, you know, Admiral Akbar or Han Solo or something, this is what stats you would have, you know, in GURPS, or this is how you would roll, or
Geeky Hoodie says, mine was D&D, and my favorite RPG is Marvel RPG from TSR. That was one of my favorites too, because that's another one that I played in high school. And
I played that one too.
It was an interesting thing, and it made sense to do percentiles on there when you did your rolls, and you had charts that you could look and see what you did and how you did it, and I really liked that game as well.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that game as well.
And if you haven't seen it, we do have that book if you want to cue that up for that, and that's what it looked like there.
So I think a lot of people may be asking, well, you're talking about these RPG books, right? So what's in the book? I don't know if your Cyborg Commando has a book in it. I've not played it. I'm assuming it does since it's an RPG. So the books will tell you like how to use that roll system, that dice system. So how do you roll for statistics? You get character sheets. So it shows you, you know, if you have these kind of characters, what kind of character class do you have? You know, do you have more of a fighter type of a character? In our RPG that we wrote, it's like, you know, are you more of a brawler versus are you more of a tech person versus are you more of like a thievy, lockpicky kind of person, you know? And so you kind of decide before you go into the game what kind of person you want to be, or or animal, or whatever the case may be. And then the book tells you what kind of stats you can have. Generally, it's things like strength, dexterity for your movement, intelligence. And so if you're going to be like a brawler or a fighter like Vince, when you roll your stats, you're looking for those strength kind of stats to be pretty high, right? Yeah. Because those are the things that you're going to want to be using.
And that's one thing that I've noticed within like D&D is that it's very linear. Like if you pick this well, that's what you are, and these what you have to choose from.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm sure the GM can say, well, yeah, maybe you can do that, or maybe you can do that.
Yeah,
But
you can
it's
do a
not
lot
really
of, like-
open. It's not as open as other systems.
Yeah, it is now, I think, because of a homebrew, because GMs are more likely to be like, okay, you can, oh, and now I forgot the word, not cross modify, but you can basically be this and kind of a little bit of this too,
Yeah.
so that you can get these stats and these skills and stuff
And
like
those
that.
are really the GMs or the DMs that I do like, that are able to kind of roll with it and find out, like, what's going to make the playability better.
Well, and one of the games, if we're talking about games that are not D&D, one of the games that's truly, a lot of the groups that I knew that are really role players, like they're ROLE, they're in that role, is Vampire the Masquerade.
Yeah, big
I
time.
mean, vampire players dress the part. We're talking like, candlelight, like having the ambiance going, putting all of that together so that when they play those vampires in that game, they're very immersed in that role, and they really do take on that persona, almost like a cosplay kind of mix with a role-playing game.
Right.
So that's a very heavy, I would say, role-playing type game, and that game lends itself to that, which is what we were kind of trying to write in a way. We're writing a horror expansion to our spy one called Project Shadow. Oops, sorry, I moved my mic. And
we're actually we're trying to get some files that we had saved somewhere, but we had it in a program that you don't use.
Yeah.
And I haven't touched in a while, so I had to go through and then find all the fonts that we used on that and re-download them so it'll look the same. So that took me a while, but yeah.
Yeah,
really
so
cool.
our sons grew up playing games with us too. So our oldest son is going to he's going to play that Project Shadow variant coming up pretty soon. So he wanted to get a look at it again and see some of that. So I need to get back in there and do some writing because it's like only partially finished. And it was a good idea. I like that kind of horror genre, and I haven't played a whole lot of them. I don't know that there's as many out there.
So I posted the link in Facebook for this, and another one that I believe Robin Bircher said was Savage Worlds. Savage Worlds is another one. I haven't particularly played that one yet.
I haven't had a chance to play that one
I've
either.
seen it played, and everybody's telling me you got to play this game. I've never had a chance to it, and then COVID happened.
Is that a fantasy? What is do you know what Savage World? I haven't even researched it. I've heard of it, but I don't know what they're.
It's. I think you can do fantasy with it.
Is it another one that's kind of like GURPS, where the system is open?
I don't know.
Because one of the ones that Vincent put on the thumbnail is D6 by D6, and that's an open system. So the author that wrote that, Lester Smith, he actually let me work with him on doing a world for that system, but it's an open system. It's a system that's available for you to basically write your own story and do a homebrew. If you pay attention to his main rule book, and it's fairly simple, you kind of have to think of it as a formula. So it's like, this is what happens in the rule book, this is what happens, this is how the story progresses, this is what happens, and so on. And if you look at that formula, you can kind of write your own story and then apply the rules and the rolling, the ROLLING, the rolling to it and make the characters that way.
Right.
So one thing that I had not seen was like a mermaid-esque, like an Aquaman type of world.
That's really cool.
Thanks.
That's a really good idea.
Thank you. So I tried to incorporate that, and he really liked that story, and he picked that up as one of the worlds that he uses in his D6 by D6. But D6 by D6 is really great because if you pay attention to the formula and you enjoy writing, really anybody can write a homebrew for that, and you just buy his base system,
Yeah.
and then you can use the system in order to do that. So I don't know, I always like thinking of new and different ways to look at role playing. It was really great for a while when steampunk was really big. We got a few really great steampunk role playing.
Yeah.
There was a group that we knew that did an extension for Pathfinder, which Pathfinder's kind
is
of
it
like
pure
D&D.
Steam?
Yeah, pure Steam. And then Tephra. Now Tephra is different because it works on a D12 system.
We do have like the cover for Tephra if you want to see that, but we
So
personally know a lot of these people that make some of these RPGs.
We've been really fortunate to get to go around Texas and be in the tabletop gaming convention scene and meet a lot of these people and get to play with them. And we were fortunate because we ran our own gaming convention. One of the really great gaming experiences that I had, that I thought we had, was we had a guest come in for Game Expo, and he writes generally fantasy, but his company got the licensing for Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
And so they had done a Song of Fire and Ice role-playing game, a Game of Thrones. That's the name of one of the books. And they had adapted it to a system that they kind of already had in place for Blue Rose. And so he was one of the head writers for that. And just getting to play with him was really great because he wrote the storyline that was in the book, and he knew that, that story had come from his head. So you were in that story in his head, right? And you got to be in there and got to be the character. And what's nice is when you're playing with somebody like that, and one of your characters will do something, and he's like, oh, right? It's always nice when you're doing stuff and then the GM's like, okay,
let's roll with it.
let's go with it. One of the best stories I have of Vince is we were playing this one RPG called Dayfly, where your character's only alive for like a day, right? And you're doing these.
It was another one of our RPGs.
Yeah. And you're doing these different like missions and types of stuff. And we had to go and get something. And so the GM's like kind of describing, and Vince is like, well, what's around us? What do we see? Because that you ask that a lot in role-playing games, like, what's around me? What do I see? Because maybe I don't have anything on me, but if I see something, it sparks in my imagination. And he was like, yeah, I don't know, it's a regular business center, you're trying to go in or whatever, it's about lunchtime, there's some, a taco truck over there or whatever. And Vince is like, oh, a taco truck, huh? And we had to take these syringes in and like inject these people with this stuff in this syringe. So Vincent goes and buys some tacos for the taco truck and then pretends to be a taco delivery guy. And the GM's like, I'll allow it. And so then he hides these syringes in these tacos and goes to deliver it. It was pretty great. Yeah. I was
That was a
pretty
good one.
impressed.
Oh, Chunkle Academy is watching. He says there's an RPG called Elder Ring coming out, and I can't wait for it. That's video game.
That's a video game RPG.
That's a video game
Yeah.
RPG, but we're talking about tabletop RPGs. But yeah, no, that one's even cool because I like that genre and kind of that in the video game realm.
In the
as
video
well.
game realm. Oh, yeah, I mean, we could go off on a totally different tangent if we
Yeah.
talked about video games, but the thing that limits you in video games that doesn't limit you in tabletop is you're there with different people with different imaginations. So just like Vince was like with the tacos, and the GM very well could have been like, no, the taco guy, or he could have said like because the GM is God, right, in the world, and he's like he or she makes everything happen. So you can ask to do something, and they can be like, I don't think so. Or they can make you roll for it with some kind of ridiculous, like, modifier, right?
Yeah.
It's raining, your socks are wet, your feet are shivering, You're allergic to guacamole, and that's the only tacos they have left. So you have to roll like with a -5 to start with, just to try to get this done. So the GM can make it difficult for you. However, if you're creative, they're like, I'll allow it.
And it really helps when you bring the GM snacks. Because when you do that, they're usually nicer to you.
So, hint, bring snacks for the GM.
It really does work.
Well, and one of the things that I really liked about Tefra playing that steampunk was that it's not like people are kind of aware of fantasy, right? We kind of know there's certain tropes in fantasy, and we're aware of Marvel. We kind of know what happens in the Marvel universe and what happens with superheroes and what you're supposed to do, and you're aware of Star Wars. So this is all stuff that we've seen. Well, steampunk is kind of more made up, right? There's less available for people, so it has to come from your imagination. So that can be a double-edged sword when you're playing that kind of game with people, right? Because it depends on what kind of person you're getting. So you can get these people with these fantastical imaginations, and they're just like going with it, and they're coming up with these stories, and they've got these intricate characters, and they're just like, an automaton or whatever, and they're kind of going with it. And then you have people who just sit there and they're like, well,
That's me.
is that you?
Yeah.
Is that you?
Chocolate Academy says, if you could come up with your own RPG table game, what would it be? Funny you should ask, because we already have one.
You don't have the book to show?
No, but I have a queue up the cover for the org. This is the organization. This is the one that we created for our game company. So yeah, this is what we do. It's a espionage.
It's an espionage, James Bond-esque. It is definitely not politically correct. It's set in that, womanizing, James Bondy, spy era, a bunch of sluts and hoes, excuse my French. It's that kind of genre. And then, like we said, we're working on using that base rule system, and you're still kind of in that, but it's more of like an X-Files-esque type thing, but it's for horror. So you're doing like...
Well, we flipped the system a little bit with that.
The system is flipped a little bit, and there's some other things that we added. We actually tried to add in this dynamic that we had not seen, and we were trying to think of how to work it, but it's dangerous because people are stupid. You were supposed to be you're going mad as you get more exposure to the evils in the world and stuff like that. So you were supposed to burn your character sheet. Okay. Because then you're losing some of your mind, right? Yeah. So you're losing some of your stats and stuff. And we liked it as a concept, but we just figured we didn't want to be liable for people like, burning their house down or burning their hands or something, and get sued or something. So we took that dynamic out. But at first when we were making it, we really liked it.
I really like that. It's really good.
Yeah, we really thought that was really cool. That didn't pan out.
We can talk afterwards. I've got an idea for that.
Okay.
You could still do that.
And what I'd really like to do is I made a game about roaches. So Chancla Academy, for children, where it's kind of like a role-playing game, but it's with cards so that it can teach them how to role play.
Yeah.
But what I'd like to do, what I've been thinking about doing, is taking that and having us write a rule set for more of like an intermediate level.
Yeah, and I know Geeky Hoodie loves that game.
I loved that game too.
I love that game too.
I was so sad that game never took off. I thought people were going to love that game.
And I had a bunch of people telling me, I was like, this is a great idea. I played that game with Steve Jackson.
Yeah, and he liked it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know what we did wrong, but we never could get it to take off. But it's a cute idea to be roaches in the house, and then they're going against the Chancla. The Chancla's in there. Chancla Academy. The Chancla's in there.
Yeah.
El Gato is in there because the cat's trying to eat. Dad with a newspaper is in there. The fly swatter, some roach spray. So you're trying to get past all of these things to win the house. But then if you make it past all these things, you've also got to defeat each other because there's soldier roaches and there's clown roaches because of Geeky Hoodie, and there is ninja roaches, and so there's all these different factions
Hoodie
of
says
roaches.
Need to relaunch it.
Yeah, I think maybe we should.
It was hard to do it on Kickstarter, and it just, when you're doing it, it's depressing.
Yeah.
When you're just like, seriously? I was like, it's a great idea, but nobody took to it.
Yeah,
not enough people took to it. Not enough people took
I think we'd really have to build up like our social media and get better at that kind of stuff, which is just difficult with us both working our day jobs.
Yeah.
I think that's what's difficult. So, I love role-playing games. I could write role-playing games and write role-playing games and write role-playing
That's your
games.
problem, right there. You're working a day job. What the hell?
I know. If I didn't have to work if I didn't work my day job, I would write role-playing games all the time.
I'm still waiting for Hoodie to get his clown roach tattoo on him.
Yeah. I was even I've worked on like a diesel punk. I've worked on like a futuristic, apocalyptic kind of diesel punk type thing. I tried to make a board game out of what I wanted to be more of a role-playing game. For like a 50s Rumble style, like West Side Story kind of thing.
Chocolate Academy says, I'll help promoting it. LOL.
LOL. But we've played a lot. You know, it's funny. We've played a lot. Our sons play a lot. And it was... I said we reached maximum nerd level the other day because we were arguing with our middle son over who's played more role-playing. We're not arguing over bills or money or any. We're arguing over who's played more. He's played more games that are geared towards the video games. So they took those video games and then turned them into RPGs. And then I know a lot of the miniatures games like Warhammer and stuff, they turned those into RPGs too, which I haven't played. I'm not allowed to play miniatures games anymore. We won't talk about why. I tend to pick up the pieces and make them battle one another physically, and people don't like that, and so they make me stop.
Especially when they paint them.
When they painted them and spent $500 on them, and they're like, "Don't touch them," and I'm like, "There's not enough action."
We were gonna even make a luchador RPG.
Oh yeah, I was working on that one too.
Yeah.
That one I thought was gonna be fun too, and somebody did a luchador RPG. And I never did see what it was. That was the first time I was going to try to write a percentiles type system. Because we use a D6 system. So we have a few more minutes. So Vince, you're better at game mechanics. Can you kind of explain to the people at home what's the difference like between D6 by D6 versus a percentile versus a D12? Like what does that mean so that people understand what that means?
So D6 by D6, I don't completely remember it, but I know it's like your dice and then you're multiplying what you roll on the D6.
But it's all D6, so what's a D6?
A D6 is a 6-sided die, like a normal die that you would find on like Monopoly.
Right. Yeah, that's a D6.
So like however like many D6 you have for a roll, then you'll use that many dice. When we talk percentiles, that's two 10-sided dice. One of them is going to be the 10, so like 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90. And then the other one is going to be the ones.
And when we were kids, so you used to have your two percentiles, and if they were different, they had to be different colors. For all the GMs I was with, and you had to call which color was your...
Yeah.
So that you couldn't roll them both, and be like, oh, I needed like a 27
Yeah.
or
But-
like
but
in a 30. And
they got smart and they started doing the ones that are like 10s, 20s, 30s, 40s.
yeah.
Like that.
but,
Which I have a set that does that, aluminum dice that have that.
yeah, but it used to be the 10-siders, they would just, 0 through 9. And so you would have 2 and you would roll it. So let's say you rolled a 1 and a 9. If you didn't call it, it could either be 19 or 91, depending on what you needed, right? And so then the GMs got smart and they were like, call it. What color? You're like, no, but wait, no,
Wait.
I needed it to be the other direction. They're like, epic fail. And our systems are generally D6 based, which is a 6-sided.
They also talk about a D20, which is a 20-sided die, which there's a lot of systems out there that use the D20 system.
I think it's like the most common now.
It is the most common
now.
yeah.
Damn you.
And it's close to what like a 3D6 used to be. So you roll one of those, you get from 1 to 20, 20 being the best. That's why if you roll something and it's a natural 20, it's like
there you go. I was wondering if you were
great
going to bring
things
that
happen.
up.
Yeah. Or if you roll a 1, like really bad things happen.
Right. Because natural 20 means I've rolled and the 20 comes up on my dice. But we were talking a little earlier about modifiers. So maybe you've been playing with this character for a long time and they're like a level 5 or something. So obviously since they're a level 5, they're better at whatever their skill sets are. They're better at climbing, they're better than at hunting or whatever.
And then
so
some
you get
systems
pluses.
are you succeed either by exceeding the number on your stat or being below the number on your stats. So it just depends on the system that you're using. Like our system is a roll under system. So the higher our stats are, the better it is to get in that range of success. So basically, when it comes down to it, it's like it's make-believe with rolls. Yeah, is what role.
There's only been a couple of systems where I've played where the stats were so good that rolling the dice never really mattered, and there's something to be said about rolling the dice because it does give that chance that you could not. It frustrates you, right? Because you're like, I know my character could have done that, but you have to roll because there's a chance, there's human error, something happens, a mosquito flies up your nose right as you're trying to shoot your bow and arrow or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So there is always a chance that you could miss or something, even if you're a sharpshooter. So I do think that the rolling the dice is necessary so that you put that chance in there. Because if we just all got to walk around and be like, oh, and I did this, okay, it happened, great, So there's a couple of systems that I've played that the stats were so out there that really you could just kind of walk around and do whatever you wanted, and it's not fun to play anymore.
And there was a character that I played forever that I can't play anymore because he became an NPC in our game.
Right, because his stats just became so good that
good.
he's not worth anybody playing. He's great to play in the game to bring flavor to the game and to help the newbie players and stuff, but he's no longer any good, for anything else.
Yeah.
And that's okay, because then when your character gets to that level, you get to create somebody new and you get to be somebody new. So, yeah.
It's a lot of fun.
So, yeah, that was like RPGs in a nutshell, more than D&D. I hope you learned about some of like the different dice and the different types of systems out there and the different availability.
There's a 4-sided dice.
Yeah. Yep.
That we use. Yeah.
There's an 8-sided, a 12-sided, a 4-sided, a 20-sided, a 10-sided, a 6-sided. You pretty much get it all.
There's a 100-sided die, but nobody ever uses it.
Nobody ever uses them.
Nobody. If you don't want to do percentiles, I guess you can roll that 100-sider, and there you go.
And just wait for it to stop.
Yeah, because it's almost
like
a ball.
Right.
Might as well be.
Yep.
Very cool. No, I really dig that. I can't wait to play more. Because it's been a while, especially I know people play online. It's not the same.
No, I don't think so. It's not the same. It's not the same.
So I really enjoy it. I hope you get into it because it's very interesting experience, because I've gotten a lot of people to play that you would never think would ever play a role-playing game or even heard about it. So
Yeah.
check it out. It's going to be
Check
a lot
it out.
of fun.
You're gonna like it.
But thanks for checking us out. I'm Vince.
I'm Colleen, and thank you, Stuart.
Geek out, SA.
Thank you.